A little bit about my background. I do live in Minneapolis, a suburb of Minneapolis. I've lived here most of my life. Spent 5 years from 91 to 2002 in Phoenix, Arizona, where, gosh, the weather was boring. Compared to what we have here in Minneapolis, it was 83 2 days ago, and it is 42 this morning. So it is not boring at all. I have been an executive director, a development director, a board member. When I was in Phoenix, I met a company that I went to work for that was a training company. And I have been a trainer ever since I met them. I worked with them for 5 years, and I put my own shingle out at the end of 2006, early 2007. And the work that I get to do as my self-given titles are fundraising culture change expert and master storyteller. The work that I get to do is to really listen and hear and share about the good news that's going on our planet, because I work with organizations all over the world. I've been to Israel in the last week, and England and South America, as well as all over the US, virtually, of course. And I get to shine a spotlight on what's working at organizations and then help you all make sure that the world, your community understands what is working, but also what more there is to do so they can insert themselves in whatever way is best for them. Two of my teachers, Lynn Twist is a colleague and friend, a philanthropist. She wrote my favorite book that I've read in the know the author kind of book, The Soul of Money. And if you haven't read it, it's an incredible read. Book groups have been started around the world about it. She just released a new version about 1.5 years ago. And then Seth Godin, who is a marketing guru and prolific in his writing. Anything you read that he has written tends to inspire. He also writes every single day something that is memorable. His blog doesn't allow comments, so it's not truly a blog, but it is inspirational messages about how to communicate powerfully. Today, we will dive into work that I believe will build on what you're doing in your Shape by Faith initiative. And this innovation that you're working through over time will cause you to think through how we're doing things, be bold and clear in your communication, and also to embrace possibly some new ways of doing things. And I believe by the end of today, you'll see how we dovetail together the work of Shape by Faith and what I'll be talking about. I also wanted to share with you some thoughts, and we had a beautiful prayer, 2 prayers and welcome from Robin. This message from Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estés, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, is something that someone sent me early on in the pandemic, and I am heartened by it. I read it often, and I thought it might frame our thinking and our energy today. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor, suffering world, will help immensely. It is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip toward an enduring good. What is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding to, adding more, continuing. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small, determined group who will not give up during the first, second, or 100th gale. As we endure the passing of a phenomenal woman in Justice Ginsburg, I feel as though we are maybe in our 100th gale in 2020 alone. So what do? what do we do after plan B or C, or, you know, this year I think we might get to Z in how many different things we're trying and thinking about and talking about. Because there's so much uncertainty, I invite us to really think about, are we pausing to take a breath, pray, or are we panicking? When we feel anxiety, we have no ability to be flexible. And so you have a special gift, if you will. You have a special framework that many organizations that I get to talk to and work with don't have. You have God. You have the ability to really know that when you pause, something powerful is happening. And that does allow you to be more flexible and listen in a different way. So I invite us to pause and think through what our responses are to day-to-day stresses, especially around raising money. And then also be prepared. Today, you're taking time to prepare and to do some planning and thinking, or even think about planning and thinking. So when we accept what is, and what is certain is that there's a lot unknown. We don't know how long we'll be working from home, wearing masks, having no vaccine. We just don't know. And so let us make sure that rather than using dramatic, heightened emotional language, we're choosing language that is positive, that is resourceful, and that maybe causes people to think about their own situation in just a little different way. So if nothing else, I invite us to breathe. You've got this. You've got God on your side. So we're going to talk a little bit about pivoting today. It's a word that's been overused quite a bit during this pandemic. I wrote a blog post very early on, and the link is here, and I'll make sure to share it afterwards so you don't have to jot it down. Pivoting, of course, is to change strategy, but not to change our vision. And in basketball, we know that pivoting means you have to keep one foot on the ground when you're dribbling that ball, right? So we want to stay the course in what it is we're working to accomplish, and yet maybe we're going to do what we need to accomplish in a different direction or in a different way. So pivot fundraising, according to me, are conversations, actions, and movements that we make with grace and ease to raise money in maybe a previously unimaginable direction. So that is the framework that we will dive in to talk today about what are the 3 most important actions you can be taking during this time, not just in fundraising, but in all areas of your communication. They're really simple. They are to communicate, they are to dispel myths, and they are to listen. If there's one thing I know for sure, it is what causes success with our families or our neighbors or our pets or in our congregations is what we say, how we say it, where and when we say it. So I want you to think about and answer in the chat box. What exactly, what specifically do you want folks in your congregation to be doing right now in support of the church? So, you know, every single one of us is whether we are sitting in front of a Zoom screen all day long or some screen all day long, we are busy. Almost busier than it feels like than we were before. And screen fatigue is something. After this hour and a half together, I will likely take a nap before I go on my walk and have a meal. Think about where and how you're letting folks know exactly what you want them to do. If I came to an intersection and these street signs were there, the ones on the screen, I think I would be paralyzed. You know, if I go to your website, or if I go to your Facebook page, or I go to your Instagram page, how specific are you? And how often do you acknowledge things that are going well, specific things? It could be an anonymous donor just gave us $300. We just had a Zoom prayer meeting, and you're invited to come next week on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. People stop giving of their time, their talent, and their treasure. When we ask them why, it's due to a failure to communicate. It is, I didn't know what you needed. I didn't know how much. I didn't know specifics. You spell my name wrong. I get too many emails. I don't get enough messages. You ask too often. You don't ask enough. What we'll talk about in a bit is fatigue around messaging. When we focus on what we want people to feel, do, and by when, we actually have a much higher likelihood of causing people to take action that is inspired, that has them and you feeling connected at a level that was missing before. So much of what we'll talk about today is in the context of fundraising, but I believe everything that we do that has words attached to it should come from a place of what do you want people to feel, do, and then by when. You knew what time to show up today. You knew that we would be on Zoom. You knew that Lori was wanting to have you bring some of your financial information about what's your budget. And then you knew we'd probably talk about fundraising, and we'd be here for about 90 minutes. How specific are you in asking people to pray or asking them to connect? My mom lives in a retirement community. They are in lockdown, as you know, lots of folks are. I can only see her outside with my mask on, 6 feet apart. But she and all of the folks in her building they've been requested to call someone different in their life every day. And they can repeat, they can go through 7 days and then repeat the list. But that has, I believe, given my mom an outlet that she desperately needed. She's calling cousins and family members and friends across the country. It's powerful. But they have a check-in at the end of the day in their facility to email, did they do their homework? And it's not a bad thing. It's not they don't get a grade. It's just to remind folks that someone cares that you're doing it. So let's talk about fundraising and dive in a bit deeper into what challenges you might be having. So this is one of my favorite quotes from Lynn Twist, and I reference it often. She believes fundraising is the privilege of facilitating the reallocation of the world's financial resources away from fear and toward that which we love. If we think about the fact that we are inviting folks to build community, to provide support for how we show up as God's love in our community, that feels very different than keeping the lights on. You still have to keep the lights on, but you keep the lights on so you can do the first things that I said. You're not having events right now. You might not even be, well, for sure you're not having Sunday services in person. So how are you making certain that people know what there is to do? I believe that when we make our fundraising invitations about our mission versus something that we have to go do and then go back and do our mission, when we blend the two powerfully, the money is there. It may not be even from your parishioners. It may be from somewhere else. And I have lots and lots of stories of how that's happened and shown up. But one of the things we have to do is we have to clear out something. In the book, The Soul of Money, Lynn talks about the 3 toxic myths of scarcity. And I want to share them with you just briefly right now. And I say it's no accident who showed up today, who will take this message back into your community, into your life. And I invite you to talk about these toxic myths of scarcity well past today. The first toxic myth, of course, is there's never enough. There's never enough time. Some of us got up this morning thinking there's never enough sleep. Now, I know that there are places on the planet where there is not adequate water, food, shelter. When we look at the world as a whole, the global aspect of what we have in resources, there is a sufficient amount. And as Lynn talks about, it is our job to help reallocate the resources. So when I was a little girl, I learned there was never enough in kindergarten. We played musical chairs, and if you did not move your fanny around that circle fast, that chair got pulled out, and you were unfortunately badly rewarded for not moving quick enough. And when you move quickly, you start to think we have to have a lot more and more and more and more. And now you're on that hamster wheel. If you believe there's not enough, we believe a lot more is better. Unfortunately, we were at the center and the igniting of a very loud movement about racism. Minneapolis is unfortunately never going to be forgotten. But frankly, I'm glad that Mr. George Floyd will never be forgotten. One of the nonprofit organizations in our community received $35 million within 10 days of George Floyd's passing. Their annual budget was $400,000. They were not equipped, nor are they yet, to handle $35 million. What I want to make sure we know is a sufficient amount is better. A lot more might be $200,000, but being specific. Right now, we live in a world of scarcity where we want to have the best, the biggest. This is not my garage, by the way. This is someone else's. How I know that we are mesmerized by more is better is one of the fastest growing industries in our country is storage. We have more stuff than any of us need. And now we are on that hamster wheel. And so we believe with our whole being, that's just the way it is. We have the smallest congregation. Our organization is not well known. We will never be able to raise as much money as some other organization. And what I can tell you is we can find evidence for anything we look for. So we get to decide if that's just the way it is, or do we believe that toxic myth? You have something, as I said, and I'll probably say this a bunch of times, you have something special. You know, you believe, you live every day in the glory of God's love. You know that there is more, and that is not just the way it is. So what we choose to do with those toxic myths when we hear them rearing their ugly heads in our conversations is to maybe pause and talk about what is working. I start every coaching session or meeting I have with that question. And we pause and answer and say, it could be my Zoom is working. It could be I found the other shoe that I'd lost. It could be that we got a contribution that we didn't expect, but something that is working, to stay in that gratitude and focusing on what is working. Support does move toward bold, clear communication. We know there are fires going on the West Coast, and lots of people in our community have left to go help them. Money is being given. I don't believe we need a disaster to be clear and bold. And this is not clear and bold. Help us with our goal is not clear and bold. This is the most disengaging way to raise money I would ask you to jot these words down, draw a circle and a slash through them and put it on your wall. No one cares what the goal is. They care what happens when we get there. They care about the impact that financial resources are making every day. So I give you permission to talk about money so you can raise more. No kidding, the more you talk about it, the more you raise, but there's a certain way to talk about it. There is a gap that you have, and that gap is where you are today in reaching your annual fundraising goal and the amount you've raised so far this year. I want to say something about that. So I have a little Post-it note on my desk right now. Every time I meet with a client, Volunteers of America in North Louisiana, their CEO, Chuck Meehan, one of my most favorite people on the planet, he and I coined the phrase funding gap many, many, many years ago. We started working together in 2003. His entire community has been trained to understand that at Volunteers of America, every year, they have a funding gap. And I know that on September 3rd, they had to raise from philanthropy. They have a $20-some million annual budget, but philanthropy is $2,450,000. That's the gap they have starting on July 1. That they have government programs, they have other sources of funding, but the rest that's not covered is $2.4 million. That day, they had $667,000.81 raised so far. So that was just a couple months after their fiscal year started. They work all year long to make sure everyone in their community understands what it takes to do their work. And so what Chuck does is he'll tell me that number. And if I don't ask about it, he'll say, Lori, I'm surprised, I'm shocked you didn't ask, you didn't invite me, but I've got the number here. Let me tell you what it is, and let me put a face on that for you. So he tells me about someone in their veterans home. He tells me about someone in their after school program, the Lighthouse program. He puts a face with their money story so that I understand that this is about someone. It's not about getting the dollars out of my pocket. And every time I meet with him, I feel compelled to make a contribution. I don't always, because I can't afford to, but I have a pledge that I fulfill with them every year. So let's go back to our slides. This is a graphic that a client of mine created a number of years ago, and they put it in their newsletter. And every month they send their newsletter out. They send information out weekly, but every month they update us. And they talk about, here's where we are today, and here's where we have to be. So here's where we are maybe at the beginning of their fiscal year, and here's where we have to be by the end. So we know what it is that has to happen. And they raise money monthly from people giving $5 a month, and they raise $10,000 gifts. When I first started working with them, their annual philanthropy goal was $23,000 for the whole year. Today, a number of years later, they're well over $100,000 that they raised from philanthropy, and they've grown their programming exponentially. So they were about a $400,000 organization. They're now a $1.2 million organization. The question is not, how do we get more money? The question is, what does money make possible? One person at a time. Hopefully what you are hearing is this is about being related and building a relationship with people. We want to have it not be about necessarily the invitation font or what picture to include, but how do people feel when they are invited to give, to show up at your virtual Sunday gatherings or gatherings throughout the week? A lot of you and your language, but the big number and the smaller numbers. So your money story is what we've been talking about. And we want to keep it simple. So to do that, we want to show how you're helping one person, show the progress to your next milestone, inform about what does it take to fully fund the mission of your church, your organization, or that specific program, or all of the above. But keep your language choices inspiring, specific, and relationship building. So rather than here's what we need, here's what it takes. Here's what it takes to bring our congregation to you and show God's love to you in programs and Sunday services and any way that you can imagine. And here's what it takes per person, because one of the things that's missing right now are the people. We want to be sure to be inviting more people into our congregation. So we're bringing virtual into our world, and we may never go back. We may have in-person gatherings, but we will always also have virtual gatherings for people who are going to be at their homes and can't leave. Elderly folk, other folks that are differently abled, people that live in different parts of the country, but for whom we are their favorite community. All right, let's go to number 2 of all the important actions to take, and we're going to talk about myths. Not very long, and be ready to type in just a moment. What I invite you to do is share the facts and dispel myths about your congregation. There is a myth that I want to dispel right now, and that is there is no such thing as donor fatigue. There actually is uninspiring message fatigue. If I've been asked to help us reach our goal 14 times this year, I just turn it off. It becomes noise. So some of the myths I imagine you have is, if I don't make a contribution, someone else will. And the church will be fine. Other organizations need me more right now. So type in, what other myths are there that you have, that you bump into? Some of you have a very beautiful building, so people think you have plenty of money. Some people think that because there's so many people that come to meetings or come to Sunday services on Zoom, we must be doing just fine. What are some of the myths that I don't know about, that your community doesn't know about, that we have to dispel in our messaging? We have lots of endowments, so I don't need to give to you. We're an elderly poor congregation. So maybe that is a myth, maybe it isn't a myth. Maybe that's the truth. But the reality is we are a congregation here for all ages, would be how I'd share that, and say that people believe we have only old folks that come to our services. Because of our large endowments, I'll give to other nonprofits. So it'll be important to explain, what do we do with those large endowments? And how much do we draw from them? And then what's the gap after we draw from them? The couch is not necessary or life-changing. I'm not sure. The treasurer will figure it out. Love that one. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Somebody's going to figure this out. I don't have to. Soccer, swimming, baseball, my kid's school, whatever it is, the food pantry, those are all more important right now. Your mission has never been more important. Our job is to make sure people feel that versus having us tell them that. So let's go to number 3. The action to be taking right now is to listen. Another myth is that we're giving to our capacity. Folks may be giving to their capacity, or they may not know what your specific, what it takes message is, so they think they're giving to their capacity. So let's talk about listening. It's really important in the work you do before a pandemic, but especially right now. To listen, there are 2 ways that I know to listen. One is to listen so that there's a space, a pause in the other person's conversation or words so that we can insert something. And the other is to listen to understand and learn. I invite us to listen to understand and learn where people are at? What if you start a phone chain, a phone tree, where people make a phone call once a week to someone in your congregation, and as soon as that person receives the phone call, they call someone on that phone tree just to check in and give them today's scripture or today's special reading, or to invite me to go to your Facebook post to see what the picture is of joy on someone's face who got the diapers. Really important to remember, viruses are contagious, but so is fear, panic, hysteria, calm, kindness, love, and joy. So which are we choosing? How are we sharing that? Oh my goodness, I had someone send me an email last night, and it is someone that I just revere. She is well known in our community, and I think of her as a colleague, but I don't presume to think of her as a friend. And she sent me a message to say, you have been on my mind, you and Mark, and how are you? Well, Mark and I are separated, and she didn't know that. And it gave me a moment to just tell her a little bit about what's going on in my life and feel a hug through the internet. We don't know what people are going through, but right now you have God's love as your what's working. And that can be shared daily, every moment, by someone. And what's the way that we can do that? It doesn't have to be electronic. It can be a phone call. It can be a handwritten note. I'm going to give you some examples that are not church related right now. Please use your imagination to decide how you might use these in your community. So this first one happened very quickly after the pandemic started. Jennifer Garner, actress, well-known, she is an arts person. She and I both, art is like their, it's our chocolate indulgent, our Dove chocolate piece. She said on a post, this time of year has so many people, from preschoolers to professionals, working their tails off to perform. And now the games, the meets, the recitals, the productions, big and small, are shut down. Well, the show must go on, people. I can just hear her saying it. Break out your oboes, belt out your torch song, run in place, I don't care. Show us what you've been working on, and we'll show it to the world. Use the hashtag, hey Jen, look at me, because I want to see. There have been so many posts with that hashtag that someone created an entire page. There have been moms stretching, doing yoga, doing laundry. There have been kids doing their whole recital. There have been dogs as the audience for people doing whatever it is they do. What if you in your congregation created a hashtag and said, God's love showed up today? And you had people start to post that on their Facebook page or in an email. I don't care. But connect us to each other. This next one, again, is from an arts organization. Heart of Dance is a tiny organization here in Minnesota. They had one of the first virtual events that I helped coach this year. And to get people ready to attend their virtual event, they really were listening to folks in the community, and they had said, we can't dance together, so show us how you're dancing at home. So this young girl did the tango. It was a quarantine tango. That was their hashtag. And this little girl, she's in 5th grade. She had taken dance through Heart of Dance in her 5th grade class until school was shut down. And she showed how she was dancing by herself. This was their Dee Dee, their board chair. She put on her best tango dress and she tangoed. They had tens of 20s of 30s of people submitting videos to them by email or posting on social media. I imagine that you could have people posting about something they're doing to bring joy and God's love. It could be praying. It could be just bringing a smile to someone. And then reading. Gosh, reading the Bible is really important right now. This library puts a cutout of a picture, and it's just a picture that the parents have submitted next to the book that the family chose that would be read online. And it's read on Facebook Live. But that family knows, and that young boy knows, this is for him. Well, what if you have people send in their picture and you read from the Bible that day, and it is, of course, for all of us, but it is especially for Jamie or whomever the picture was sent in for. Talk about building community. They have every day 14, 15, 20, 30 people not only liking, but commenting and sharing the messages. So think about and jot down for yourself, how are you listening to your community? How are you having them listen to each other? If fundraising is about deep, profound relatedness, I give to where I feel connected to, and I want your community to feel connected to you in ways that they may have forgotten. So I want to talk a bit about language. Powerful, inspiring, clear, bold language. The words we use in our minds, to others, in our daily work, can cause us to stand out or can cause us to just blend into the blur in the background, as you see on the screen here. I invite you to craft messages that teach us a little something new about what's going on every day. While the doors are closed, but God's love is still flowing. Inspire us with a face, a name, an age of someone whose life is different because they are connected to your congregation or your organization. And there can be a subtle or overt call to action. Here's the language that I unfortunately hear most often. And that is donate, attend, help us, give more, give again. Duty and obligation is distancing. It is not inspiring. So and I invite you to reframe your messaging, your thinking, your messages on social media, your emails. Invite people to invest in God's love. Invite people to understand what their impact is, because you're going to put a face on it. Here's who your gift will help. It may be you or your neighbor or someone you haven't met, but let me put a face on it for you. We're looking for long-term partners. Be clear about that. We are looking for people for whom God's love is as important to them as it is important to us. And then there's the stealth communication that just weaves its way in. And if I had a hashtag for every time we used it today, my page would probably be filled. These are words like hard and complicated and donor fatigue and we can't and there's not enough and they won't. What I know is when we use words like this is more of what we get. So let's use inspiring possibility language. We're learning to share with you what's happening on a day-to-day basis. Our job will be to inspire you. We have days when we have some work to do to inspire ourselves, but our job will be to inspire you. Because what if we could double our congregation's attendance on our online meetings, and then when we get back together in person, or triple or quadruple it? We're looking for the very right people who are long-term partners and want to, no kidding, stay with us through thick and thin. You want to paint a picture of one person for me and remind me that person could be my grandfather or my sister or someone I've never met before. Those pictures that you paint are what I call mission moments. They're short, inspirational examples of how a donor's contribution is making an impact about a real person. So this was one of the only pictures I could find about quote unquote real people from your Instagram, the Episcopal Church in Central PA Instagram page. But the language that was used wasn't as engaging as I would like it to be. Talked about the Sycamore House as a program connected with St. Stephen's Episcopal Cathedral for young adults ages 21 to 29 who want to spend a year living in community and serving locally. They still have a few openings for 20 to 21 cohort and are accepting applications, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. What if you had said, Harry, whoops, let me go back. And go back, Lori, there we go. Harry, third from the right, is one of the graduates of last year's inspiring Sycamore House program. He invites you to change your life forever by participating in, and then you can tell us what to do. Put a face and a little bit of feeling in about what I might experience. When you put a face on what I make happen, then you want to share it everywhere in your day-to-day conversations. I can tell you stories of real people whose lives are different and tell you even a little bit about what it takes from most organizations that I work with. There's a man named Blaze who's 28 years old, and he was tortured violently. He is now a graduate of the Center for Victims of Torture programming here in Minneapolis and St. Paul, but he met them in the Congo, and he's moved here. Took about $10,000 to change his life. And the words that stick with me about Blaze are, when he tells his story, he says, they could torture me, but they could not kill my spirit. Makes me want to support the organization. Mission moments create unforgettable emotional connections and empathy. Sympathy creates distance. We are not looking to have people feel sorry for you, your mission, your dire straits. We are looking for them to be inspired, to do more of what you do well. So you will raise more by putting a face to what I make happen and sharing what it takes financially to do that. That is the gap between where you are today and reaching your annual fundraising goal versus the amount you've raised this year. And if your gap in that amount where you are today and raising your annual fundraising goal, if you know that number that you're starting at is too small, you can say, when we are a $100,000 organization, or when we are a $500,000 congregation, we will be able to do blank, blank, and blank for you or people you haven't met. Here's where we are today. Here's your new message pyramid. We have to understand why you exist. You're a vehicle for God's love. You're a vehicle for me to feel God's love on a regular basis. Your money story is a part of your message, and a one-person example is a part of your message, but we have to understand that from the top down as staff and volunteers with the organization, but we share the message from the bottom up, from the lens, from the eyes of that one person. I'm going to invite you to share a mission moment today before you go to sleep tonight with someone. Could be the mirror, could be someone you call on the phone, could be Amy just turning to Greg and Greg turning to Amy. Whatever it is, share a mission moment with someone, but please include your money story. And it can be simple as, so let me tell you, let me put a face on the work of our congregation or in the work of Seroptimus for you. Here's, we'll call her Elizabeth. Here's what happened when she came to blank program. Here's what it takes to create that program. And that's a part of our blank annual budget. Today, we've raised about maybe $40,000 towards that amount. So we've got work to do. But I put a face on your impact so you know when you make a contribution, real things are happening. People might forget the name of the person. They might forget the numbers, but they will not forget how you caused them to feel. So moving forward, don't forget, fear makes bad fundraising. Do not go silent about money right now. Use you and your language. Fear causes us to be extra careful in our communication. Now is not the time to be extra careful. It is the time to be clear and bold. Don't weaken your message by having 14 people approve it before it goes out the door. Build healthy habits for engagement, for connection, and you will raise more money. There's research that's been being done in the UK and now also in the US since March. Originally, people just started giving to help. They wanted to feel less helpless. When doors shut down and we couldn't leave our houses, people were also giving to lessen some guilt. Now, people's stock market portfolio is starting to change. I just talked to a donor yesterday. He said, Lori, my net worth changed by half yesterday. That's a lot. So the rule of communication that the research is telling us is show how people, beneficiaries, are being impacted. Talk about staff and how you're still doing your work. Build trust. Demonstrate authenticity. Make sure that if things are changing quickly, you're keeping us updated. And utilize your communication to build community. You are disruptive innovators. You are taking the tools of communication and turning them on their ear. And being a disruptive innovator means you're a change agent, and that's not always the pleasant place to be in an organization. But people who are change agents, they focus on the right questions to ask. They focus on leading by example. They have a clear vision, and they're patient as well as persistent about where we're headed. So take risks, be forward thinkers, use meaningful donor engagement strategies, and use new ways, as you probably already are, to provide your programs and services, but also to see people. Technology is the thing that we can use to challenge the status quo. Here's one example that I just love, and this came out, the first week that the shutdown happened in our country. This is from Volunteers of America and their national office. You'll meet the CDC guidelines while reinforcing a positive mindset. What are you grateful for? When you're washing your hands, take the 20 seconds to think of 3 things you're grateful for, and then put your church logo there. Post that. Have there be a picture of someone in the background, maybe. This is an arts organization in Italy. Italy has seen a difficult time. The founder of this Academy of Art in Florence had people send in pictures that they were painting. That was called a view from your room. And they were painting what they could see because they could not leave their houses. And they had a contest, and they've awarded 2 people full scholarship to come to the Florence Academy when they reopen sometime next year. What could you do similar to this that maybe is about who are you praying for? What are you seeing outside your window that you're grateful for? And then put visuals with the numbers. $50 for this symphony orchestra does something. $500 pays for piano tuning for 1 performance. $2,500 does something, $10,000 does something, $20,000 pays for a rehearsal. What does it cost to pull together a Zoom congregational meeting? And if you are having an event, this is a lovely, fun depiction that an organization did in South Dakota. Early on, they had a fundraiser, but as people were giving, they got their faces put on the chairs in their facility. And they just kept posting those all day. And they had it be like people were signing up to come to an event, and there were seats that were already full. You will get a copy of the slides, don't worry. So you'll have all these screenshots to take a look at when we're done. Communication must lead to change. We have to change where we're at today to be solvent, to be financially and fiscally stable. So what I ask is, please type in What did you learn? And one action that you'll take over the next week or two before we meet again. And I'll read some of them off in just a moment. But while you're typing in, I want to remind you, this is from the back side of the very short read, 32 pages from the Good to Great in the Social Sectors monograph. Jim Collins says, greatness is not a function of circumstance. Greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter of conscious choice and discipline.